Hello everyone. Welcome to the Transition Streets Cohort, Session 1. My name is Marissa Momartz and I'm part of the small team at Transition US. And before we dive into introductions, while people are still trickling in, I'm going to give a brief overview of the Transition Streets Cohort and our agenda for today's call. And you can also see I sent a presentation, a PDF, just to follow along, which is in an email sent around 10:30 called Materials for Today's Teleseminar. It's the first attachment. It's not necessary for you to have that, but it might be helpful just to have something to look at. And right now you're all on mute. If you have a question, you can press 1 on your keypad and then we'll know. Otherwise, we'll turn everyone's mics on when we get to the introductions. But this way we just keep out the background noise. Great. Well, I'm really excited you're all here and to be joined by some of the folks from the pilot as well. So Transition Streets Cohort is a group of Transition Streets initiators, all of you, who are receiving access to a series of online trainings, including today's call, and peer-to-peer support telesalons, as well as an online platform called Lumio for sharing questions, ideas, and resources related to Transition Streets. And you can see more about this on slide 2. Our intention in the cohort is to support you in successfully implementing Transition Streets in your neighborhood or community by connecting you with tools and peer support, and by sharing the successes and the lessons learned from the Transition Streets pilot, which happened this spring. The cohort is a new model that we're trying out to support local transition leaders based on the model we used for connecting participants in the Transition Streets pilot. And we'll be asking for your feedback on the model at the end of the cohort. Today's teleseminar is called Transition Streets 101, and it includes an introduction and overview of the Transition Streets project and tips from 2 of the participants in the Transition Streets pilot this past spring, Linda Curry from Transition Berkeley and Larry Goldberg from Transition Humboldt. We were also going to be joined by Logan Blanco from Transition Charlottesville, Albemarle, Virginia, but she's ill today. She will be joining us on the next call. I'm very grateful to Linda and Larry for joining us because learning about their experiences has been really valuable and inspiring to me, and I hope it will be for you as well. The next teleseminar in the series will be September 30th and will be focused more on outreach, how to invite your neighbors to participate, and how to engage local media and the broader community. We'll be hearing from more participants in the Transition Streets pilot who came up with creative strategies for inviting their neighbors to join their Transition Streets group, got some great local and national media coverage, including NPR, and launched Transition Streets to their wider community. And then following these 2 teleseminars, we'll be hosting 2 telesalons on October 7th and 21st. Telesalons are opportunities for you to call in and share your questions, ideas, challenges, and successes related to Transition Streets with other folks who are initiating Transition Streets in their neighborhoods. And the final element of the cohort is an online platform called Lumio, where we can share ideas and resources and post questions and discussions. By now you should have all received an invitation to join our Lumio group, and if you're having a hard time accessing Lumio, send me an email or stay on the line after today's call and I'll help you get on. Okay, that's almost it for logistics, but I also want to mention we're using a platform called Maestro Conference, which allows me to see who's on the call and to control the sound quality. And like I mentioned, if you have a question, press 1 on your keypad and then I'll know to call on you. And finally, we're recording today's call and plan to post the recording on our website as a resource for other folks who are initiating Transition Streets. All right, now let's get to the fun part and find out who's on the call. Since we've got a lot to cover in an hour-long call, we'll make this short and sweet, just your name and where you're calling from. And then if you're eager to connect with people more, you can join one of the telesalons or the Lumio group. And we have a pretty small group so far. I imagine a couple of people will join late, but most of the folks I think will be listening to the recording of this. All right, so I'll start. Like I mentioned, my name is Marissa Momartz, and I'm calling from the Transition U.S. office in Sebastopol, California. And I'd also like to welcome my coworker, Caroline, who's in the office too.
Hi, I'm Caroline Staden, sitting here in Sebastopol, California with Marissa, and looking forward to hearing from all of you.
Great. Linda?
Hi, excuse me, I'm Linda Curry, and I'm in the Transition Berkeley group here in Berkeley, California, the Bay Area.
Great. Thank you. Larry?
Hello, I'm Larry Goldberg. I'm up in the redwoods of Northern California in Eureka, California, and I'm with Transition Humboldt.
Great. Thank you, Larry. Zizi?
Hi, this is Zizi Vaughn from Norway, Maine, and I'm with the Center for an Ecology-Based Economy.
Great. Thank you. Dolores?
Hi, I'm Dolores. I'm from Missoula, Montana, and I'm with Transitions Missoula Steering Committee.
Great. Thank you. Tabitha?
Hi, yeah, it's Tabitha Green. I live in Decorah, Iowa, and I work at Luther College.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Christina?
Hi, I'm Christina Zill, and I'm with Transition Catskills in the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York.
Thank you. Richard?
Richard Rose. I'm in Richmond, Virginia.
Wonderful. And Sandra?
Hi, I'm Sandra. I'm from Melrose, Florida, and I've heard about you through Sustainable Living.
Great. Thank you. Well, welcome. I'm very glad you're all here. And the nice thing about having a small group is there's more time for questions at the end. Okay, so before we get into the presentation, I wanted to do a little visualization, which is something that we often do in transition, imagining the communities that we want to live in. So let's take a minute to drop into this call. Put your feet flat on the floor, close your eyes, and take a deep breath. Imagine what your neighborhood might look like and feel like after you've brought your neighbors together to implement transition streets. You step outside your house to walk to your mailbox and see lots of front yard gardens and rain barrels and compost bins on your street. Maybe it's quieter because there are fewer cars going by. Your neighbors are trying to walk and bike and use public transportation more often. You open a mailbox and see a bill from your utility provider. You open it and are delighted to see it's much cheaper than usual since you've done a number of the actions to conserve energy in your home. You smile and wave to a neighbor you didn't know before she joined your Transition Streets group, and she walks over to offer you some apples from her tree. And maybe that's already what a lot of our neighborhoods feel like, and maybe it's not, but it's our dream, and I'm glad we're all here to work on creating this. All right, so let's talk more about how we can get from the neighborhood we live in now to the one we dream of. And with that, I will turn it over to my coworker Caroline, who's going to tell us a little bit more about what Transition Streets is and how it came to be.
And for those of you just joining us, we're looking at the presentation that Marissa sent by email about half an hour ago. And you don't need it. You can refer to it later if you'd like. But this is the Transition Streets Cohort session, and it's the first PDF attachment. And if you are on that, we're now moving on to page 5. And just diving into, well, what is Transition Streets? And Transition Streets is really a very practical project that brings neighbors together. It focuses on reducing your household energy use, your water use, reducing your waste, bringing in more local food into your family, into your household. And in the process of this, it's getting to know your neighbors in a much richer way. So what's provided is the handbook that I think most of you have seen now and downloaded. And then this type of series and the guides that are also available, and our past recordings are all tools for you to use to make it more successful. And I wanted to go into sort of the background briefly, how it started, and if you want to go to the next slide, you can do that. So it started in Totnes, England in 2010, and 468 people initially were engaged in the process of the very first version of Transition Streets, and more since have taken it, and it's also spread to other parts of the world. And of those surveyed from those initial participants, one of their main surprises when they got the results was that only 2% of those people said that they would not be interested in further meeting. So the majority of people wanted to keep doing things together in their neighborhoods. In England, too, they also installed 141 PV systems, and they reduced their household carbon by 1.3 tons and saved approximately $938 on household energy bills. And another statistic they were able to garner was that $1.5 million went into the local economy because more people were purchasing things locally in their shift that was generated by Transition Streets. The next slide sort of gives a history of why we started in the U.S. and what those steps were. So this project was award-winning in the UK. Won the Ashton Award for Sustainable Energy. Had all these great statistics. And of course, we wanted to adapt it in the U.S., especially when we heard from transitioners across the country through surveys and conversations how interested they were in rolling it out in their communities. So for us, it was just a step of how we could make this happen. So in summer last year, we started a crowdfunding campaign with a number of transition initiatives. And our goal was $8,000, and we surpassed that by several $100s. And we were able to move into sort of the adaption phase. So we called really into the network for experts in the fields of water, waste, food, transportation, and energy, and got experts to help adapt the curriculum chapters and make them U.S. focused with U.S. examples and U.S. metrics. So that was the first step. And then in spring, January through March, we piloted Transition Streets and again put the call out into the network, who would be interested, and 12 communities across the U.S. were interested in being part of the pilot. And the pilot was more rigorous. One of the tasks of the pilot groups was really to survey the participants taking Transition Streets in their locales and provide feedback to us so we could improve the product. And we got great feedback from the pilot groups, and we incorporated that feedback into the subsequent version that we now have for all of you. And the pilot groups not only improved the product and the outreach guide and the facilitator guide, but they really have become keen spokespeople for the project, and they've caught the attention of several media outlets and received some really great media coverage that helps all of us moving this project forward. And with the pilot groups, we did hold some teleseminars and telesalons, and we did share resources on the Lumio platform. So hence, that was really the basis for this cohort work that we're all involved with today. And the final slide we'll look at right now is, or page 8, is to take it to the final stage. In spring 2015, we hosted a hackathon, and the purpose was really to get a new website for Transition Streets launched, and all of the web pages with all the download materials. And we brought some great people together in our office and really kicked it out and really worked on it and got the basis for the website that 2 brilliant volunteers took farther. One creating the current web homepage of Transition Streets, and the other really working on the subsequent pages with all the download materials. So grateful to them for all that work. And that brings us to really the present time that we're in, with all of you now and all of the other people who have downloaded Transition Streets and are ready to roll it out. And this is the national launch of Transition Streets, and we're extraordinarily grateful to have had all the help in getting this product and process to you, and look forward to all of the ways that you'll shape it for others that will follow. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Caroline. Now I'm going to go over how Transition Streets works. We're on slide 9. This is Marissa again. So I broke it down into 6 steps, and then when we get to Linda and Larry, they can give their perspective as well. But essentially, we start by getting familiar with Transition Streets, the website, the handbook, the supporting materials like Caroline mentioned, the outreach and facilitator guides, and the evaluation form. And you can also do that just by participating in this cohort, and you'll be exposed to all of those materials. But just to get a good sense of what Transition Streets is, so you know what you're getting into and what you're inviting your neighbors into. And then the next step is to invite your neighbors to participate. We recommend 6 to 8 households. That's what was modeled in the UK, and Larry and Linda can also chime in on that, what worked well for them. One way to do that is to create an invitation letter. We have a sample for you that's in the outreach guide. Thank you to Linda for that. You can invite folks by going door to door to neighborhood meetings, posting flyers, using online networks like nextdoor.com, maybe reaching people through your local transition group. There are a number of ways to invite your neighbors, and we'll get into that in more detail on the next call. And a number of folks from the pilot group suggested hosting an info session prior to actually starting the project, so your neighbors can get all the information that you've learned about Transition Streets and see the video that's on transitionstreets.org and all of that. So once you have your group of neighbors who you know are going to participate in Transition Streets with you, you set up meeting times. The handbook consists of 7 sessions, so you'll meet for 7 sessions. You can take turns hosting the meetings or meet in a community space. You discuss one chapter of the handbook at each meeting. In a minute we're going to go through what all the different chapters are. And then we have facilitator guides if you want the extra support with the suggested agenda, which is available on transitionstreets.org, or I sent you a sample of one in the email this morning. So at the end of each session, you decide on which actions you're going to take, actions that will help reduce energy, water, and waste in your household. And you commit to taking actions and then ask for or offer help in implementing those actions if needed. Once you've made it through all 7 sessions, we suggest that you evaluate the impacts of the project. We have an evaluation form which you actually complete part of it at the beginning of the program in the first meeting, and then part of it at the end of the program. It helps us see what your actual carbon and water use reductions are, as well as just what you thought of the program and any feedback you have for us. And then we also recommend celebrating the success that you and your neighbors came together for this time and did this project together. Celebrating is the key ingredient of transition. And then after you complete the 7 sessions, really the sky's the limit. Like Caroline mentioned, most folks want to continue meeting, whether it be through potlucks or skill shares or work parties. Transition Streets can also be used to engage people in transition, whether starting a new transition initiative or re-energizing an existing one. You can help launch other Transition Streets groups, which is now what we're seeing with folks who participated in the pilot. For example, in Charlottesville, Virginia, the folks who did that pilot group are now launching 7 more Transition Streets groups in their community. And it's really a platform that you can use to organize to improve your neighborhood. And at the very least, you'll know your neighbors better and you'll feel more comfortable sharing things and asking for help and all of that. Okay, so moving on to slide 10, the handbook is available at transitionstreets.org. You can see there's a little link to the handbook. You can click on that and then download it. It's 140 pages, so you might want to just use the online version, but you can also print it. It's in color, but you can also print it in black and white. All right, so the first chapter is Getting Started, and this is for your first meeting. It's kind of just an overview of the program. It has a suggested agenda. It has a section on coming up with group agreements and sharing your contact information, and basically just setting the foundation for your group to operate smoothly for those 7 weeks or 7 months or however often you decide to do the sessions. The second chapter is Energy. So this is the first topic chapter. There are 5 topic chapters. And in each chapter there's kind of an introduction to the topic. There are tips and actions you can take to make your household and your neighborhood more sustainable. In this case, we're conserving energy. There are probably 6 to 8 actions on how to conserve energy. The one that we're showing here is learning how much energy you're using by using electricity monitors. And then there's lots of steps and hints and tips on how to do it as cost effective as possible and just other tips. Okay, so the next section is water. The examples we're showing here are the section on how to fix taps, drips, and leaks in your house, and then outdoor water usage, which is a huge consumer of water in some areas. And the next section is food. We've got an overview of supporting local food systems, and then a section on reducing food packaging. If you want to see every action that's listed in the book, you can look in the table of contents in Chapter 1, and that will give you an overview of all the different actions and sections. The 5th chapter, Waste, includes your group watching The Story of Stuff. It's a great 20-minute video on consumerism and waste, and then covers reduce and reuse, recycling, and compost. And then the final topic chapter is on transportation. And you can see at the end of every chapter is a checklist or a chart of which actions you plan on taking. And so by writing it down, you're kind of committing to doing that. And then you can check in with your neighbors at your next meeting to see who's followed through and done the actions and who needs help. And then there's also a bigger picture discussion about every one of the topics, which you can see here, the bigger picture discussion for the transportation section. So this is just a sampling of a couple pages from each chapter in the curriculum. And then the final chapter is What's Next, and that's your last meeting. It includes your evaluation and then figuring out with your group what you want to do now that you've finished this program, and also includes celebrating. So the next slide is just a few highlights from the feedback we received from the pilot groups on what people love about Transition Streets. So you can come back to this later if you want, but it kind of gives a a little overview of the essence of Transition Streets. And then there are a few additional resources to support you. One is the Facilitator Guide that I mentioned. There's a Facilitator Guide for each chapter, which you can download along with the handbook on transitionstreets.org. It includes a sample agenda for each chapter. You don't have to use the Facilitator Guide or the sample agenda, but it was helpful to a lot of people to have an outline to work with on how they want to host their meetings. There's also an outreach guide attached to the email that I sent you this morning and also available on transitionstreets.org, which includes tips on how to engage your neighbors and community in Transition Streets. It's got a sample press release and a sample letter to send out to your neighbors. And then the evaluation form, which is really important, that's also in the email I sent you this morning and on transitionstreets.org, and that's to help us track the carbon and water savings of the project, as well as get your feedback on what you liked and what could be improved. And then finally, before I turn it over to Linda and Larry, I wanted to mention that today we're launching a collaborative crowdfunding campaign for Transition Streets called Local Action Global Change to support the Transition Streets national rollout and developing additional modules for the handbook, which will likely include one on emergency preparedness and possibly one on the drought in California. And this is also an opportunity for official transition initiatives who are going to be implementing Transition Streets to use the campaign to fundraise for your own Transition Streets projects. And it's very simple. To do that, all you need is to have any contributors you refer to the campaign list the name of your transition initiative in the comments box when they contribute. So if you have questions on that, you can email me or stay on the line. And it's going to be launching today. Hopefully today. We're just waiting for our video to be finished. And I'll send out an email letting you all know when it's live. And we would really appreciate your help spreading the word. Like Caroline mentioned, this has been a really crowdfunded, crowdsourced, grassroots, collaborative project. And this is really important to support this work moving forward. Okay, so I will now turn it over to Linda. Linda, if you could just share, based on your experience, whatever you think is most relevant, tips and stories for folks to hear who are interested in bringing Transition Streets to their communities.
Oh yeah, I'd be happy
Thank
to
you.
share. And what's hard about this is I was going through my notes and thinking about the group that I helped lead in February through March of this past year, and there's so much to tell. So I'll just talk for a few minutes and share some of the highlights that stand out in my mind. I've lived in my neighborhood in Berkeley, California, about 8 years with my husband, and we have 2 kids, one who just graduated from high school and one in college. And since we moved here, like, everybody's really friendly. We live on a great street with not a lot of car traffic. It's pretty slow. But I noticed that at first you kind of say hello to people, and you tend to be coming and going a lot. We have some retired people, some people with younger kids, and then some people like myself with kids that are a little bit older. But with our lives and the pace of things, we tend to just, it's a hi, how are you, a friendliness, but then there's not a chance to go deeper often. And so when I heard about the program, I wanted to do it immediately. I had done some work on a program called the Low Carbon Diet for many years and had led groups around that program and found a lot of success there. But this was one that was real personal to me because I wanted to get my own neighbors involved and really get to know each other on a deeper level. So that's kind of just a little background on my motivation. And I'm coming at it from community organizing, but also I just feel this is the way to move forward on the huge environmental, social justice issues that we face too. So I was able to get a good group together. We had 11 of us participating, and 7 households, 11 people. And I think what was so interesting was the people. The people are really the most interesting thing. Everybody has some interest or expertise or something that they're passionate about that they can share and help influence each other in all kinds of ways. We had, I'll just share a few of the folks in our group. I won't share their names, but I'll just share kind of what they were interested in. So one fellow is really an avid biker, and he knows all kinds of things about where to get bikes and how to repair them. A couple people in our group have landscaping backgrounds and vegetable gardening skills. They know how to do irrigation. Somebody else is a therapist and knows about mediation. And we had a woman who just really loves to walk and loves to cook. We had another guy who does solar design, and we have another neighbor who is an accountant and loves to do research and measure things. And then we had another person who is a high-level energy expert working at the level of the grid and very, very high-level energy, those kinds of issues. And then somebody else who knows a lot about chickens. So we had just this great group of people, and I felt like my job as facilitator was to kind of find what people were interested in and let them kind of shine and share. So I'll just share a couple little deeper examples of a few things that people did. The man who is the high-level energy expert got a couple of kilowatt meters. Those are the meters that measure your electrical use. And he really got into it. He went around his home and he did a comprehensive energy study of all his appliances while they were turned on and while they were off. And he came back with this list of everything in his home. And, there were some interesting surprises about some of the things that were actually using a lot of energy when they were turned off. He also discovered that his refrigerator was not efficient and was an older model and something that he was planning to replace. And then other people also discovered, well, my refrigerator is old too, and then they checked into their energy use of some of their appliances and started to make decisions around either changing them out then or in the future when they were able to financially. There was one person who loves trains and has done extensive amounts of travel by train. And so when we came to the section on transportation, he did a bunch of research and used a number of the resources that were recommended in this program and kind of just did a little report on this is how much energy is being used by these various modes of transportation. This is how much emissions and pollution. Here are some great trips I took by train and things I saw. And, he shared from his personal experience there on that particular issue. There was a woman, the one I mentioned, who really loves to walk, and she shared what she sees in the neighborhood when she walks around and how much enjoyment she gets out of doing that, out of seeing the leaves change and the seasons change and seeing people out, as they're coming and going. She also was very excited about food, and she, when we talked about food, she brought in some articles from the New York Times about food waste and how that is such a big issue, and something that's becoming more known is how much food gets wasted from the farm, all the way to our plates. And she had some recipes to share that included ways you could use more of the produce rather than cutting everything apart, the stalks off the broccoli and throwing them into the compost, actually using those in the recipes. So how am I doing on time, Marissa?
You're good.
Am I okay on time?
Yeah.
Okay. And, the thing that I always get such a thrill about in group interactions is just how much we influence each other. And at one meeting, we were talking about packaging, and somebody, a neighbor in the group was kind of complaining about, like when I go to Trader Joe's, I really can't shop there anymore because there's so much excessive packaging. And another person in the group loves to shop at Trader Joe's, and it's maybe a little rifled at first, but it wasn't. It was fine. And he came back the next week, and he had gone to Trader Joe's, and he said, I sort of noticed that too. The amount of packaging is something I hadn't really thought of much before, and we talked about maybe some actions you could take around possibly talking, writing letters to the store, not shopping there. We talked about potential personal actions you might take around that. Shopping at the farmer's market, for produce instead of Trader Joe's, where they often have things heavily packaged. We did a visioning, like Marissa sort of walked us through at the beginning of this teleseminar, and part of our visioning we thought about and talked about was having just no cars, less cars around town. I mean, our street's fairly quiet, but we live in a very congested area, and we talked about just having a town where you could just bike around and feel safe and free. And after that visioning, a neighbor I saw that weekend said, I thought about that, and I didn't get in my car this weekend, and it felt so good. She says, it's easy to get around here. We can walk a lot of places. We can take the bus or BART train, and she said, I feel so much more relaxed because I drive during the week for my job. And so it was just something it was almost a habit just to get in my car on the weekend, and I'm glad that I didn't. So, those are a few of the examples, and
okay.
I just feel like, the program is great in guiding us through these different factual and action steps. And then the people are the ones that really bring it home and inspire each other to actually take those actions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I love hearing the story of how it unfolded in your neighborhood. Before I turn it over to Larry, I just wanted to see Katie Ellen, you have your hand up. Did you have a question?
Oh, I don't have my hand up. I'm just on my phone. I'm not able to get connected with the...
Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Larry now. If you want to take maybe 5 minutes, Larry, and then we'll get to questions.
Okay. I'm Larry Goldberg, and I live up in the north coast of California. I don't know how many of you have ever been here or know this area, but it's a very rural area of Northern California. And we have a transition group that's been meeting for about 3 years now. And we decided to get involved in the Transition Streets program right at the very beginning when it was even being planned. This is last fall, and there was a lot of internal discussion within the transition movement. And we were helping with some of the development of the early materials, and then were the first pilot session in January. So we actually finished our pilot in early February and wanted to be able to give feedback right away to the transition folks. So we were piloting this at the very beginning of the year. Since we're a rural area, we started with our own group, And so we had about 8 members of our group take part in the initial pilot, and we met literally every week for 6 weeks. So it was a very accelerated program for us. I don't recommend that for other groups. I think you should spend a couple to 3 weeks between meetings so that way you have time for things to digest. But we added a lot of ideas and sent them in, and I see that some of it was incorporated into the revised manual, and that's really good. One of the points that I would bring out for our region, and I think this might be true for a lot of others, is we think a good entree point for getting the discussion started is talking about emergency preparedness. In our case, we're very concerned about earthquakes, but whether you live in a place where you have hurricanes or you have a place where you live where you might have forest fires or other types of natural or man-made threats, that's an area where people are really concerned and want to start talking. And all of these topics have their own aspect in emergency preparedness. When we talk about water, when we talk about energy, when we talk about food, they all have aspects of emergency preparedness in them. So that's a good segue to begin the discussion, and I'm working on the development of a chapter that I hope we eventually add to this manual on emergency preparedness, because that's an area that I think we could all start a conversation. But in our case, we did the pilot, and many good ideas came out, just like Linda described. When we were talking about water, people had lots of water-saving ideas, and we started comparing notes and saying, I put in a water-saving toilet, and it cost me $85, and I'm saving a gallon per flush now, and if you add it up over the year, it's this many thousand gallons. And so in an area like ours where we are experiencing a drought right now, and everyone's been, I'm sure, hearing about the forest fires and drought conditions in California, this is a real topic of interest. I mean, in our area, drought and water are normal, but now we've got a very serious problem statewide. And so it's very easy to do a discussion on how to save water, because now everyone's trying to conserve water, and we're all using many of the tips that were brought out in the chapter on that. I will point out that one other thing that we suggested from our pilot was that we really need to develop an extra page or two on going the extra mile. So, for example, in the water chapter, I mean, we talk about all of the things you could do to save water, but for those who want to do, for example, a composting toilet, that's, above and beyond. And that's something that, we should at least start discussing, that there are people in situations where a composting toilet might make sense, and that's, going to the next level. And the same thing for energy, that if you want to do a photovoltaic system or other kind of energy production system, that's kind of above and beyond. And I think that we might want to add to the curriculum in time, but begin the discussion and then look at adding to it in time to go above and beyond, to go to the next step where you become what we call a net zero household, where you can actually produce all the energy that you consume. But in general, there was a couple of comments that came out from our group, one of which is there are some differences between homeowners and renters. And so one thing you might consider when you're doing your program is identify which kinds of people are in your group. I'm very fortunate in my area that I have a homeowners group that I've been part of for over 30 years. I've lived 37 years on the North Coast and 30 years in Trinidad, my town, and we have a group that's been meeting for 30 years, so we actually have a homeowners association that meets once a year, and we're integrating the Transition Streets program into our group. So we already know each other and have already been meeting on a lot of different related issues. So this is kind of a natural development. But if you're just going to be meeting with your neighbors for the first time, I really suggest you do it around a potluck or some kind of social event. Have people, start talking to each other and then kind of work your way into the curriculum. But it is good to figure out who's a renter, who's an owner, and there are some differences in approach between the two. The other thing to really look at is who is urban and who is rural. Because in urban areas, there's going to be certain emphasis that might make more sense than in rural areas. You may or may not be able to grow more of your own food, in which case you may want to get more involved with farmers markets and co-ops and CSAs and things like that. So you might want to, individually develop the curriculum to focus on your particular situation. And that really brings me to the last point, and that is it's a flexible curriculum. The curriculum that was developed is really excellent, and it's a great first step, but I say that we should develop it further in each community, that when you talk about, for example, resources available for energy, add all your local nonprofits and utility programs and everything else, so people have some tools to work with in your local area. So if you want to, find out, well, can I do solar on my home? Well, you should have some names of some contractors or groups that do that kind of analysis, so that when you meet, you can say, well, here are the names of the people who do this kind of stuff, and now it's really customized for your community. So I would say, take this like a basic pasta recipe, but you add your own spices and kind of spice it up to your taste, and that way you have a really customized program that will have a lot more impact in the long run. So those are my comments from our experience.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Larry. I just wanted to also mention, following your comments, that there are some pages for you to add local resources at the end of each chapter, and we would like to further develop the curriculum. And also, if you're interested in customizing it more for your area, contact us and we can talk about how to make that happen. So now let's open it up for questions. You can raise your hand by pressing 1 on your keypad. Okay, let's start with Dolores.
2 questions about the curriculum, actually, the handbook. Does the order that you take each lesson matter? If, like in our area, the local food opportunities are more available before winter sets in. So if we started in the fall, would it be better to start with like number 4? Does it matter which order we take each of these topics in?
Dolores, I think it's kind of up to you. It might just be a little confusing because that chapter is labeled Chapter 3 or Chapter 4, but it doesn't really matter which chapter you do first. And I think people have started with other chapters. Linda and Larry, do you agree with that?
Yeah.
I tend to agree. Yeah, I think that you can, do it however you see fit, but it does tend to flow in the way that it's laid out in the book, but it's your call.
Then I had a second question. Should I wait or go on?
No, you can go ahead. No one else has their hands up, but please do raise your hand if you'd like to go next.
Okay. You mentioned that the handbook could be downloaded to print out or to access. And so I wondered, would it be possible to download the handbook into a form that could actually be used during the workshop by people? Instead of printing it out, they would have it to be able to access and to use and possibly add in their own local things like Larry mentioned. Is it that interactive, or is it printed out or not?
You can use it without printing it in your session. That would be if people want to pull it up on their computers. Another suggestion was to have one person pull it up on their computer and then project it. If you have a projector, you can project it on the wall. The editable version is in PowerPoint, so it's not super user-friendly, so we haven't put that version out just because it's a little messy and complicated. But if you really want to edit it, we can send you that. We're just asking that groups contact us first, so that we can make sure you have it customized with your own group name on it, so people know that it's your local version. And then we would like to edit it or review it just for quality control, just to make sure that they all are somewhat similar and have the same kind of tone and such, since they're all the same Transition Streets program. But it would just, and the group in Charlottesville is going to be doing this, and they're calling it Transition Streets Charlottesville version.
Marissa, can I add something?
Sure. Go ahead, Larry. And then we've got some more hands up.
I just want to point out that it's worth printing one copy. I prefer doing it in black and white. It's much cheaper. And if you have one printed version in a binder, you can then make it available in some kind of public area, like a library or someone's collection. We have a couple of copies, and we're making one available in our local library, and we're also making available a copy for people to reproduce it themselves. If you do it in color, it's kind of expensive, but if you do it in black and white, it's relatively cheap. I think our total cost for production was, around $5, $7, something like that. So it's worth printing one copy, and then you can certainly use the others in a PDF form or electronic form.
Thank you. That's really great info. And I also wanted to mention in the document I sent in the email today called Tips for Transition Streets Initiators, there's a few more tips on printing and just facilitating and organizing your group that we pulled from all the feedback from the pilot groups. So you can get some more ideas there. And as well, Linda and Larry and the other folks from the pilot are really good resources on all of this stuff. So you can talk to them via the Lumio group or in our telesalons, but they have a lot of good ideas. Okay, Zizi, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to back up a second and have you guys talk about how transition streets tie in with transition towns.
Yeah, that's a great question. Caroline, do you want to take that? Yeah. I think you're on mute. There you go.
I think Transition Streets is a great entree to transition towns. And when groups do want to know what more to do, I think that's a great opportunity. And some of them might be very interested in creating a transition initiative if there isn't one, or as Marissa had mentioned, re-energizing one. And the other thing too is Transition Streets is a great tool for transition initiatives to use. It's a tried and tested model. It's very straightforward, and groups can pick it up. So it's a great tool for the toolkit of transition initiatives, and it's a great pathway for groups becoming transition initiatives.
I just want to add to that. It's got all the transition ethics and principles kind of applied at the household scale broken down, but doesn't have and it includes some of the systemic thinking, but it's focusing on the simple actions. So for people who don't want to start by looking at the big picture, or maybe they do, it's a good starting point, but it's just kind of approaching it very simply at the household level. And then, Christina, you had your hand up as well.
Oh, I just, in the conversation about the printing of the manuals, I first got a bid for getting printing done on 50 manuals, and I was shocked at how much it was going to be to just have a printing company do it. So what I finally wound up doing was I just printed out the little introduction sheets in color. And then everything else I printed in black and white. I made a great investment on a laser copier, and so I just was able to do two-sided printing. And then I got some binders from the dollar store for like $2, and that's been a pretty great way to print it out. Then the other thing I wanted to ask you guys is ask the people who've already done Transition Streets, because what I'm finding is that people in my area, and I guess it's true all over the country, are very wary of anything that's going to take their time. It seems like time is the most precious commodity now. And so I was wondering if you're finding that most of the people who are participating at the beginning are retirees, or are you getting people from different age ranges?
Linda and Larry,
I can answer from my experience with my group. We had a few people. We had 11 total people, and I think 3 of those people were retired, but the rest were working adults, and nobody had young kids. We didn't have any young families. We had just one couple that had older kids. And yes, time is the toughest part. And I think our next session, next teleseminar, we're going to talk about recruitment. But what I tried to do was get as many people as I could interested to come to one meeting at my house. And from there, then we discussed, what would be the best day and time, how frequently do we want to meet, those kinds of issues. And frankly, people missed meetings. We had people missing some, not extensively, but I think at least everybody missed at least one meeting. And I felt like the group still worked anyway. I kept in touch with people by email, even the ones that missed. And yeah, time it's tough. It is. That's probably the hardest thing, is for people to commit to the time that it takes. But I think people are also feeling disconnected. And I feel like in my neighborhood, I think there was that underlying sense that we kind of wanted to know each other better. And so that was a strong pull. And after we met the first couple times, it became more like a party. We always had refreshments. We'd sometimes have the potluck. And I found that my neighbors really liked that. They really like to get together and talk and socialize. So if you can get them in the door, then it's easier. It's the initial push that's a little bit hard.
Could I say something on that matter as well?
Yeah.
I agree with Linda in that regard, that if you're trying to make it a social experience, neighbors like to get together and gossip and talk about what's going on in the neighborhood. And I think if you reserve the first 10 or 15 minutes to just chat about what's going on and keep it light, you don't have to dive in right away. It gives people a chance to settle down, and we had food at all our meetings. And even though people might miss a meeting or two, people really wanted to come. I think the key is how frequently you do it, and I wouldn't do it more than every other week or maybe once a month, and that way it's not really cutting into too much time. My sense is the best time to do it is in the winter. So we're actually not really expecting to really start full-fledged in our project until late October, and we're going to go through the winter with it because things around here really slow down as we get closer to the holidays and into the winter. And I think January and February are really excellent times to do this kind of stuff because you're not working in your garden, you're not doing a lot of other outdoor stuff, and there's a lot of projects to get ready for the next year. So I think that timing-wise, that might be a good time to initiate.
Yeah, I agree with you, Larry, on that. Summer's tough. Everyone in Berkeley travels. They're all, everyone's busy in the summer, and fall tends to be pretty busy too. So either late fall, maybe even starting October, maybe October, November, could be a group. And then other than that, I think our group is also in the winter, February to March.
Great. Thank you. Okay, I would like to formally close, maybe just by, we could do a quick round and just share a word or two about how you're feeling about bringing Transition Streets to your neighborhood or community after today's call. And then if anyone has further questions, you can stay on the line. Linda and Larry, I'm not sure if you can stay on the line for a few more minutes. If you can, that's great, but definitely Caroline and I will be here. Wonderful. So I just want to say thank you. And Zizi, can we start with you? You want to share a word or two about how you're feeling after this call?
Yeah. I'm feeling like it's time that we picked up Transition Town again, and that the streets may be a way to do it. Overwhelmed because it is hard to get people out, although there are a lot of people that have been asking for how to be more sustainable, personally, and this might be the way to give them the information they need and get that ball rolling. So I think it's good, but I need to I need to delve in more and see how to practically do it.
Okay.
So this has been great. Thanks.
You're very welcome, and we're here to support you.
Thank
Dolores?
Yes, we're excited about it here. We're planning a public meeting that's open to everybody at the library. We've been advertising about with all the people that's in our Transitions Missoula email group and beyond. And we already have several people interested in starting in their neighborhood, and so we'll be working with them. And then trying to get more people that might be interested from the meeting. We're going to show the video and everything there. And then recently we got a quote from Steve Runnings, who is a Nobel laureate professor from our university here, about how great this program is and one of the best he's ever seen. So we're broadcasting that around to draw in people.
Wonderful. Thank you.
So that's it.
Christina?
Yeah, I think that it really resonates that maybe a good time to do this is in the winter, and I just kind of learned that this summer because I organized a couple of events it was very tough getting people to turn up because there's so much going on and there's so much to compete with. In fact, I did I got a booth at a festival that was the weekend after Memorial Day. And it was supposed to start at 10, and I've been to festivals at this place before that would have like 1,000 people in attendance. And so at 10, I saw one person kind of trickling in, and I think maybe 20 people attended that fair that day. And it was just a real eye-opener to the fact that there's a lot going on in the Catskills in the summer. It's like the starting gun goes off because we have such horrible winters here. And so I think that doing things in the villages might be the way to go. And so I'm hopeful that if I start this maybe in like November or even later, maybe in January, that maybe I can get some people to turn out for it.
Great. Thank you. Richard?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any immediate plans. I would have to say I was curious in what I could learn about this. I've read Rob Hobson's books and met with a group here, Transitions Neighborhood, although I'm not technically a member of the group. We have an active environmental awareness group in our church, which has put in rain gardens to model for the community and has worked on reducing the energy and water footprint of the church itself. Working through Nextdoor, I've identified about 10 people in the local neighborhood and who seem to be interested in the Transitions Neighborhoods idea. And it's my thought that we would meet in November.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. Linda?
I'm feeling really re-energized about the program, and we just had a Transition Berkeley meeting last night with our steering group, and a lot of people in my group would like to try to do the program, and I had said I would be a support to them. And folks in our group live in different parts of our town. We have about 110,000 residents here. So I'm feeling really re-energized, and I'm just feeling really grateful to you, Marissa, and Caroline, and all the help at Transition US to get this together, because I know it must have been a huge, huge amount of work, and I'm really excited that it's coming to fruition and really getting out further. So thank you both.
Thank you. We are grateful to you as well. And how about Linda Eleanor?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, hello? Okay. Didn't know if I was on mute or not. Yeah, I joined a little bit late. Sorry. It's been fascinating to listen to this, how it's all developed. I had done the transition training and then took it to Tucson several years ago, and I've been looking for something that could be like an add-on program to a resilient neighborhood project that I'm involved with, and I think this is just the perfect thing. So I'm really excited to see that you've taken it down to the street level. It's just I've always kind of intuited that would be a necessary thing, and I've been looking also for some resource where, because I keep hearing people always say to me, well, what's something we can actually do together? So I think this looks like a really nice framework. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Great. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
Tom?
Thanks for all your work.
Hi, this is Tom in Sonoma, California, and I joined late as well. And our steering committee, our Transition Sonoma Valley steering committee is meeting tonight. We are planning to pilot the program within our local group. We'll probably have at least 2 or 3 of our core steering team members are going to do it in their neighborhoods. We've reached out to our local disaster preparedness organizers. There's a program called SCOPE here. I'm not sure what the acronym stands for. And they've agreed to kind of break the ice in each of our areas and invite neighbors together to talk about disaster preparedness kind of on a block-by-block scale. And we're thinking that'll be a very effective way for us to launch Transition Streets and to kind of get over that initial hump. I'm impressed. I've read through most of the manual, and I'm impressed at the format. It's a very great, concise format. It has some, we'll need to do some localization of it for our local needs and resources, but we're pretty excited about the format and eager to see our transition initiative moving beyond primarily kind of information awareness and films and events to actually getting out there in the community and doing something. So we're all pretty excited about that locally. Thanks for your support.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Thank you, Tom. Sandra?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just found out about you guys yesterday, so I did a lot of reading last night. Very excited about it. We are in a very small area here in Florida. I only have one street, one light in my whole town. So, but we do have big towns around us, and hoping that we'll get this started here and then launch it off into some of the other big towns. It sounds great. We probably won't get started until after the holiday season. I think I'll have a hard time trying to get people to make meetings during Thanksgiving and Christmas, so I'll probably wait until January. But I really appreciate all the work that you put into it. The letters that go out to the community are going to be really helpful. The way you have that all outlined for us is great. So thank you.
Sure, you're very welcome, and we'll try to connect you with some other transition folks in Florida too. Okay, Larry?
I echo the sentiments of everybody so far. I would like to point out one thing that we've mentioned in the talk but needs to be emphasized. The Lumio conferencing system is a way for us all to talk to each other as we go. So I strongly recommend that people get on Lumio and look at the comments there, because you'll find out you're not the first one to run into this or that problem. Everyone's, talking about these things, and it's really important that we share our experiences with each other, because this is simply the first rollout. It's going to be rolled out again and again through the next year. So the more we share on Lumio, the more what would I call it? A knowledge base is built. And we want to really build a knowledge base so newcomers can get up to speed fairly quickly. So you have a lot of resources out there. We have each other. Let's share our experiences. And together, we're going to make this a great program. I can really see this developing into a major national effort over the next couple of years. And this is the first phase of what will become a long-term project. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. Thank you. I love your energy and enthusiasm. Nils, do you want to chime in?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, this is Nils. I've just been sort of eavesdropping on y'all. I'm new on the national team with Transition US, and I'm calling from Northern California's Lake County. I'm just really excited to hear that folks are taking this project on and doing it. I'm sure it was mentioned earlier we're doing this crowdfunding campaign for the transition streets. So something that I might add in for you to think about is that we're launching this week this Indiegogo campaign to raise funds for the national rollout of transition streets. And we really are encouraging local groups like yours to partner with us on this fundraising effort. So if you share it out in your Facebook networks, all of your local people who contribute to it can send 75% of that money directly to your local group. So we're trying to get, the local groups to have skin in the game and have us all supporting each other. So that's definitely something to think about. Look for our emails this week. And beyond that, I'm just excited to be moving the movement with you guys. So we'll probably all have a chance to be in touch more and more in the future. Larry, I want to talk about emergency preparedness stuff. Yeah, I'm just really excited, feeling all your energy. Go you.
Great. And now Caroline.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It's always so heartening to hear people's voices and where you're calling from, and just get a better sense of the remarkableness of the people in this vast network who are building resilience in their locales. So it's just extraordinarily heartening. So thank you all so much, and it's just great that there's so many of us all engaged in doing this remarkable work together.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I'm really grateful we can try this model of co-learning how to bring transition streets to our communities. And with that, I'm going to close. And if anyone has specific questions for Caroline and I, or maybe Linda and Larry, you can stay on the line. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And just talk to you again at our next meeting on the 30th of September. So bye for now.
Okay, there are a few people on the line. If you have a question, maybe press 1 on your keypad.
Everyone's just enjoying the love fest. No one wants to leave.
Okay, Dolores?
I did ask the question before, but let me be sure I'm clear on the answer. With the editable version of the workbook,
yes,
you said it's in PDF and we would access through the transitionstreets.org. Is that correct?
Not for the editable version. The editable version I will need to send to you, and it is in a PowerPoint format.
Oh, okay. So mainly the editing I was thinking of would be to add in local stuff. Otherwise it would be keeping it the same. And that could be projected for the group to see then.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the way we want to go. That was just a thought that I had while I was listening to you. So
okay.
The group has talked about getting things printed out, so that may be the way we go.
Okay, great. And then maybe just take a look at the local resource sections in each of the chapters and see if you think that's sufficient for what you need for local resources. And if not, just email me and we can talk about getting you the version that you can edit.
Okay. Yeah, there is really a lot going on in Missoula that fits well in with a lot of those chapters, and it's not really in there. So I think adding information and connections would be useful, but that's something we'd have to work on a little bit.
Okay, wonderful.
I wanted to add something too also, Dolores, this is Caroline, that the chapters are currently in separate PDFs. And you could also, if you are going to print it, you could print your own additional pages that you would insert in between the chapters or something. So you could just use the PDF as is and print that out and then add those specific community local resource pages if you want, or you could put it as an appendix. Or so there's ways you could do it without going sort of into trying to edit it as well.
Right, but I thought that the editing I was talking about would be like adding those in, not changing what was in the thing,
yes,
but just adding to it.
Yes, editing you could add in those local pages that Marissa was referring to. Yes, you can certainly add in there, or again, you can leave all of that alone and just create another appendix or document as well. So there's a number of ways you could do it. We're just trying to make it as easy for people as possible. And the editing, it's not too hard to mess it up from the PDF. and then you know, that's so anyway, there's a few ideas for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
If you have do you have time still? I have a suggestion on the way we did it that worked well for us. We actually decided not to print. Only 2 people wanted printed copies, so everybody read ahead of time, and we got to the point where people kind of were assigned or picked sections of each chapter to focus on and kind of report back on just those sections. And so I just had a flip chart where I had the chapter and the main heads of each section just taped to my to the wall. And then people just came with their own notes, and they just, you know, shared what they learned and from their own experience. And that way of facilitating, everybody got to participate more than just having one person at a time. And that seemed to work pretty well. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. So you printed out the thing on the flip chart. You enlarged it, or?
Oh, I just by hand. I used a marker. I just wrote the main chapter head. I wrote the things we were going to do at that meeting. Okay. You know, it's kind of a repeat. You know, you're kind of reviewing, and then you're talking about, you know, the steps you took, and then you're talking about the new material. And so I just put that on a flip chart and just wrote it by hand, you know, as a way to, you know, facilitate. And then in between the meetings, like, you know, say it's a chapter on water, there's a number of sections to that chapter. People agreed to take one of those subsections and look at it more closely and come back to the next meeting and report on what they learned and maybe add the local resources if they knew them. So the only thing I did print was there's an action sheet for each chapter, and those are to be kind of filled out during the meeting. So I just printed that one page of the action sheet, and then people could fill that out, and that would also be a reminder of what they said they wanted to do in between meetings.
So when you said everybody,
I just want to release Larry. If you don't want to stay on the line, you're welcome to sign off.
She just agreed to sign you off if you wanted to sign off.
Yeah, I'll sign off now.
Okay. Thank you, Larry.
So when the people read it, they just read it from the online copy then themselves. They went to transitionsstreets.org. Okay.
Yeah, there's PDFs, downloadable PDFs of each chapter, and I actually sent them out. I sent them out to the participants, so they would have it. They didn't need to go and do that themselves. I had done that already, and just sent them each week the chapter for that week. You could do it all at once, I suppose, but that's just the way I did it. I'd send it each week, and then people would review on their own and come prepared to talk about what they learned.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
We had this discussion about how companies now and people are trying to reduce their use of paper. And some companies, like Sungevity, is one of the people in our group works for Sungevity in their paperless office, and he's like, no way, I don't want any paper in my house. So, it depends on, how comfortable people are, with, doing things and remember things online versus, having a hard paper copy. It has a lot of pages, especially if you print them one-sided. If you can print them double-sided, it's less, but it's a lot of pages.
Yeah.
And it looks beautiful.
Thank you.
It looks beautiful on screen, especially beautiful on screen. So, if you're going to do all that copying in color, it does end up being kind of expensive, and either the participants are going to pay, or you're going to have a way to cover that cost.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Linda. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, you're so welcome. I really appreciate everything you did to make this happen, and it's super exciting to hear people from all different parts of the country, wanting to do it. So great work.
Great. Okay. Nils, you're still here. Any last thoughts before we sign off?
No, I just happened to be taking a walk at the moment and decided to keep listening. Much respect. Yeah. At first, I was kind of I was mistaken on what Transition Streets was, and the more I'm learning about it, I really see that it's going to give folks a really powerful in just to get started on building the relationships to take transition to the next level. So yeah, build the relationships. Thank you all for your time.
All right. Okay. Well then.
All right. Thanks.
Myself.
Okay. Have a great afternoon.